Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. This is your Monday best bets and our futures look for the week. Joining me as always, the future Jays. Not always. Joe Dellera has been missing the last couple of weeks due to the holidays and then his birthday. He had to go have a birthday party. And so Joe Dellera is back with us. The worst, most annoying voice possible. Joe Dellera is back with us. You can find him on Twitter in the Action Network app at Joe Dellera. Jim Turvey also joins me. You can find him on Twitter and in the Action Network app at Turvey Bets. We'll talk about most improved player today, mostly because I'm ready to fight with Jim over one candidate not being eligible, who's not even taking anymore, but we'll give you the best value on a confusing award. Everything we talk about today can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. Best place for you to track your picks. You get up to the second information where the bets and money are coming in on. Our live shows stream in the app, so you're going to get notifications if you're like, I want to catch more of these live shows, but I'm not always on YouTube. I don't know when you guys are going. If you're in the app and you're just tracking bets, little thing pops up, says we're live, and lets you know that we're live, like on Green Dot Daily, which I'm going to be on Wednesdays and Thursdays this week. So make sure to check that out, as well as we'll be doing more live shows for the NBA with the NFL wrapping up once my producers all go into a coma for about 3 weeks as they try and recover from the NFL playoffs. Speaking of, you should check out the Favorites podcast. You should check out the Action Network podcast. You should check out all those folks because they're having a great NFL playoffs so far, for the most part. I'm not going to name names. Stuckey. And so, I'm just kidding. Stuckey's awesome, but had to give him a little bit of shit there. Yeah. All right. So we're going to do best bets for Monday. Big slate for MLK. MLK Day, a day to honor the contributions of Martin Luther King Jr., an important day, given how the NBA preaches social responsibility, which is why the NBA elected to place 10 teams on a back-to-back or 3rd and 4 on this game day. Great job, guys. Just go ahead and punting on all these games because the NFL has two games. Just come on, get this together. Not a great slate, and the injury statuses, we're in that part of the season where injury statuses are tough. And what I will tell you is that we will continue to make picks the night before based off of the information that we have. But if you're an everyday listener, and thank you for being so, you do need to be very cognizant that there will be a lot more times when you're going to see our guys here on Buckets buying out of positions, when you're going to see lines move erratically, because this is the time of year when everything gets wonky. Everybody's banged up. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's just trying to get to the All-Star break. You got about, I would say, it's the 14th. You have another week of what I would consider to be solid NBA basketball, and then everything goes haywire as everyone starts being making literally on their, I've seen guys after games processing losses on their phones, making plans for showing me, being oh, I'm going, this is where I'm going for All-Star. I'm not reading over their shoulders, but they're making plans for All-Star. So be cognizant of how things can change very quickly after this week. Things get really wonky before All-Star break. All right, it's enough jabbering for me. Let's get to some best bets. Jim Turvey, what's your best bet for Monday?
Yeah, you kind of set it up perfectly because there's 2 teams that I'm on with some injury discussion included, but I'm going to be on the Pelicans and the Thunder, almost certainly. And then I like one total. I like Pacers and Jazz under 249.
Okay. Joe Dellera, what are your 2 bets for Monday?
So I'm looking at the same game, and I'm looking at the Spurs plus 7.5 and Victor Wembanyama over 29.5 points plus rebounds.
Okay. For me on this Monday, I'm going to be on Lakers Thunder under 238. I will be on the Thunder at any number if SGA plays. I will be on Bulls money line only versus the Cavaliers. Spurs Hawks over 246.5 and Warriors -8. So I have, as always, I have too many best bets, but that's what I do. I am the lettuce and tomato on the burgers that we make here at Buckets. I'm just the condiments that make it look bigger when it's on commercial than it actually is. Let's start with Lakers Thunder. It's the smartest way to go about this. Yeah. So SGA is questionable, not just with a minor thing. He's questionable with a knee strain, which is could be concerning. Like if there's an MRI that pops up, he could be out for significant time, and we'd do an emergency pod on that and react to all that with MVP and everything else. But Jim, give me the read on this Thunder plus 1.5 and walk me through your injury contingency handicap.
Yeah, I think the injury contingency to start is perfect because this really is it. We talk all the time about how the books, when they open these numbers and there's a player as central as SGA, who you could make the cases, in that 5-point swing type of player season right now, they kind of land it in the middle. So if Shai doesn't play, I'm going to be on them. But if Shai does play, I'm kind of in your world of like, there's a lot of leeway on this. So right now they're plus 1.5. I'm kind of reading this as the book see him as about a 4-point player. And so if he plays, it's going to be, right around a pick 'em, maybe even Thunder by a 0.5 point. If he doesn't, I think it will go out to around plus 3.5. I will be taking them either way though. I have this, if he does play, I have it around Thunder -6. If he doesn't, I have it still Thunder as small favorites. The Laker team, again, they are not that good of a team, and it amazes me that the books keep hanging these opening numbers for them that we're able to fade. They have popped up and played a couple of decent games of late, but this is a very paltry offense. This is the Thunder, the type of team that is just going to be able to run the Lakers out of the gym. So I really do like this, on almost any sort of way. I just want to wait and see where it lands so that I know which of these two tacks I'm taking.
Do you think this is a halfway number or a full number for Shai?
I think it's a halfway number. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a halfway number, which is really interesting. So there's some numbers coming up. I'm going to try and make this as like narrative-y as possible. All right. A book posted look ahead lines for MLK Day because it's a major day on the schedule, which is great because we get to compare what did bookmakers think before we had data on this season and what do they think in this moment right now. And the look ahead line on this was Lakers -4.5. Okay. So if Shai is out, right, then this looks very weird. Like, how much would you adjust from a full season number from Lakers -4.5 to now? Because I will just tell you straight up right now that I have the Lakers as significant dogs. Yeah. If this is a full strength matchup, like
100%.
Jim, do you have a number on this?
Yeah, I think it was 6 is the number that I have if SGA is full strength is what
so
I
the
have
Lakers,
at least.
So the Lakers have been awesome at home. Okay. With a normalized home court, I have this at normalized. Like if you just give the Lakers like normal home court, I have the Lakers as 8.5 point underdogs at home. Now, I am not saying that that's like the best accurate number because when you factor in how good LA's been at home, this gets down to the Lakers should be 2.2. And so then if you're like, all right, let's say that Shai is worth 6 points to the spread because he's that dominant, that's an MVP level adjustment to the spread. So it's a little heavy, to be quite honest. Then this is like a halfway number that makes a little bit of sense. This is a 3.5 point move from where I would have it. Still, it's like that's a little bit heavy, honestly, right? So I don't think that the Thunder are that much worse without Shai. What I do think though is that every indication here is that the Thunder are still not getting the Thunder are getting more credit in the market. The Thunder are still not getting enough credit in the market because if this is a halfway number, let's say it's 5, right? And so this would go to Lakers -4. That doesn't make any sense, right? If it's halfway, if we push it to 2.5, if Shai's out, that wasn't making any sense. Would the Lakers be 4-point favorites over the Thunder without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Maybe, but that seems extremely heavy versus like Thunder -1. If we move it 2.5 the other way, okay, maybe. I still think that's light, Joe. Like, I still think that that's light based off of the disparity between these two teams, regardless of, and I understand the pushback, which is like Shai is their entire team. Their whole offense is built around him. I agree. But no player can be worth that much to the spread to make this number make sense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it has to do with, right, like if we look at the season numbers, OKC was -5 when they played back in November. Then they were -3.5 when they played in December. So I guess like when you look at that and you say like, all right, well, like both of those games were in OKC, and then we look at this game as being played in LA. Like you said, the Lakers have a tremendous edge in terms of playing at home. I think maybe you can get to that like 2-point spot, but based on your numbers, you can't. Like I think based on the priors that we have, like sure, this is probably appropriate, but I think that based on the way that your numbers are coming in and the way that you're looking at it, it doesn't really make sense. The one thing that I will say, looking at this, and we look at OKC's schedule, they play the Lakers and then they play the Clippers. Looking at where the Thunder are in the standings right now, I know that a lot of times we talk about saying, well, it's a lot more important to win the games that you can definitely win and then go and try to win. And then like, you know, if it's a coin flippy game because the next game is against the Clippers, then maybe you rest against the Clippers. The only thing that I think is that they don't really match up great with the Lakers. Like, I don't love the matchup from a personnel perspective just because of the fact that you have like AD on Chet, that type of matchup. Like, I don't love it. I think that OKC might match up a little bit better against the Clippers. So that to them might be like the easier game of the two. So when you look at this, the fact that it's a back-to-back, both games in LA, maybe this is actually the full number of, you know, the +2, and maybe it'll only go to maybe like a +3 when he's formally ruled out. And I think that might make a little bit more sense, just based on the fact that when we look at the schedule, I think that, you know, they've split so far this season. But I do think that the matchup might be slightly better for them against the Clippers on Tuesday. Give Shai that extra day of rest. That's probably the way that I would look at this. So I think that like that's why the line is where it is.
I think that for me, like I kind of mentioned now, like if Shai plays at any number, I don't want it without Shai. It's a letdown spot for the Lakers for sure. Like,
yeah,
I'm always very big on those letdown spots and how the market overreacts. But I do think that I want Shai just because I'm like, I will feel very confident in OKC after losing to the Lakers in OKC previously. I will very much like OKC with Shai. And I just won't like them as much, like enough without Shai. Even if I think the number's wrong, Jim, that doesn't mean that I have to bet it. So I'm not going to bet it if Shai doesn't play. Are you going to bet it regardless?
I think I will, mostly because I think Shai is potentially at that, you know, like you mentioned 6 point. I think his level of play is right around that. I mean, he's putting together a, you know, borderline MVP season. But the Thunder to me are among the teams, like when you look at Jokic and the Nuggets, there's not at all a like for like. And there isn't a like for Shai. And like you said, he does drive a lot of their offense, but they have such better depth than a lot of teams. I think that, you know, when we talk about, you know, a player goes out, it's, you know, someone gets moved from the bench, but someone gets moved out of the rotation into the rotation. The Thunder can handle those moves a lot better than some other teams when they're missing their stars. So even though Shai is at that 6 point level potentially, with a roster like the Thunder, I weigh that a tiny bit less. And I think the market still is at that point of weighing it a little bit more. And really, this is, you know, it is kind of market play of the market has been low on the Thunder all year and high on the Lakers all year. And, you know, when you get two teams on opposing sides like that, it's always like I picked this out before I saw the line when I was doing prep earlier in the week. I was like, that's probably a game I'm be looking at. Now, I don't want you to think I'm coming in here just confirming my preconceived notions. Then the number came out and I crunched the stuff. I just wanted to make sure to kind of, you know, take a look at it earlier and it did indeed match. So I'm almost certainly going to be on them either way. It would really have to be that, you know, they had been including him as out already and you know, the line doesn't really move and then he's out and it's only +1.5. I don't see that being the case. Yeah. But that would be the only case in which I'd be hesitant.
I love the under in this game. First off, Lakers home unders are 14-7 this season. The Lakers, if they win this game, it's probably going to be with defense because they're able to slow down OKC's offense. Because I will say that like the biggest kind of thing, if you want to try and knock OKC, is like they've had exceptional shooting luck early this season. They are one of the highest differentials between location, effective field goal percentage, and actually. I've got this all the way down at 228. So there is like no way I can get here. This is my biggest advantage on the board for an under on the slate. So I'm going to be on the under regardless here. I think it's a great spot for an under. I think OKC's defense, even with, because part of it's like Davis can score efficiently and they still don't seem to go over. Here's a corresponding trend, which is, and this backs up both Jim and my play. Lakers this season at home versus teams over 500 are 6-4 straight up, 4-6 against the spread for just 40%. 2 of those wins are versus the Clippers, including one when they were a mess early in the season. Another was versus the Rockets. Another was versus the shorthanded Magic, and another was versus the Suns. So like, even the wins don't project awesome, and the overall mark is not good. Also, Lakers versus teams over 500 at home, the under is 8-2 this season. So I've got a lot of trends there. I like this to be a lower scoring game. This is just a really high number. I like under 238.5. Let's go to the New Orleans Pelicans. And again, Jim, give us the full injury rundown on this game and the contingencies for under what conditions you do and do not like Pelicans minus 3.5.
For sure. So the Pelicans were without a lot of their guys on Saturday, and they actually pulled off a nice little road win as pretty significant underdogs in that game. Now all of those guys are back and looking as probable. So not only are they returning a lot of people, but they're returning a lot of people who now have an extra day of rest in there as well. On the flip side of this, Luka is doubtful right now. Dante Exum is listed out, and Derek Lively, who is, he was one of those guys who I targeted earlier this season as a guy who matters maybe a little bit more than you would imagine for a rookie center who's not a go-to name. He's listed as questionable. So if both teams were full strength, this is 2 more teams where I've been higher than most on the Pelicans this season. I've been lower than most on the Mavericks this season. So this is already going to be a matchup I'm looking at this way. If both teams were fully healthy, I would actually still have the Pelicans favored slightly. I'd probably have it right around to pick them. When you add in, Luka being doubtful, Exum being out, and Lively being questionable, if Lively's out, this takes me to Pels like minus 7.5, which is kind of a crazy number. But and then if Luka's officially out, then add maybe 1.5 more points there. So I have this far off from where the market is, with the caveat that Lively and Luka don't have official reports, and all of those guys on the Pelicans are probable not officially playing. So it's one of those where I'm almost certainly going to be on the Pelicans, but maybe 1 or 2 of those Pelican guys flip. Luka suddenly is upgraded to questionable. I don't want to bet it this second. I'm most likely going to be on the Pelicans, in part because of these 2 teams and where I view them in comparison to how the market sees them.
Okay, so this is kind of interesting. The Pelicans, I think, are very tricky to find the right spot for, right? Yeah. Because Joe's like, no shit.
Yeah, Matt.
But the Nuggets game, I think, is a great example of this, right? National TV, real chance to make a showcase performance. They've been playing great. First end of a back-to-back, so you want to get this one. And like Zion literally said, yeah, I missed some shots, so I got passive. And you're just and Brandon Ingram made some weird play, and they just fell apart. They just fell apart. Now, some of that was also the bench, which has been really good this season. And maybe that's the biggest advantage here, is that they can beat up on Dallas's bench, which can be volatile at times. I will say that I still have this power rated with an edge towards Dallas. I think that this is probably projecting that Luka's out. And so this probably goes to I'm trying to think of what number this goes to if Luka's in. If Luka plays, I think this is projecting an out, right? At 3.5.
Full out.
Yeah, full out. He's doubtful. Has been missed the last couple of games. This definitely seems like he's going to miss time. Or he's going to not be here for this game. I don't know what he winds up being. If we give him the superstar 6 here, then we're talking about what? 2.5 here. And I've got that dead on the number for where they're at. I would still probably lean a little bit towards Pels there because Derek Lively is so important for them. But they've also been kind of figuring some stuff out. That's important to kind of keep in mind here, is that the Mavericks have weird losses to the Grizzlies and the Pelicans without anybody. But they also have figured out some stuff without Luka on the floor when Kyrie's been running the show.
Yeah.
It makes me a little bit nervous. I get where you're coming from on this one. I do think that Dallas is not good versus good teams. My only problem is that the Pelicans, when they are good, they're the type of team that blows out Dallas.
So
Go, hit me.
that leads perfectly. I've gotten written here for my next point. I like the alt lines here as well.
Okay.
The Pelicans have been the king of blowouts, like kind of like you just said, and that goes both ways. Ever since that big blowout loss to LA, they've gone 12-5. Half of those wins, 6 of those 12 wins, have been by 20 plus points, with another one being by 19. If I didn't just choose an arbitrary endpoint, so they really. When they go big, they go big. And if Luka is out, it's not a bad game to kind of fold it in, and eat that 32-point loss and kind of move along. And like we said, it's that point, that time of the season where that's not the end of the world. So I very much like alt lines kind of towards that extreme. I'll be looking at Pelican spread. I probably will still be on it, but I think I really like those alts. As high as 20, 25, even 30. So I'll be looking at that a couple ways for sure.
Yeah. I one other bet that I like in this game too, Jonas Valanciunas, his rebounds line is at 9.5, and you can actually get double at plus 110. I don't know how that number is existing, honestly. Like, he had 12 boards on 19 chances when they played the other day. Like he's great in like these weird matchups. Like Dallas is not like the best rebounding team, and I do think that without Luka, there's less presumptively without Luka, there's less chance of him like getting into severe foul trouble. I think from somebody like driving in the lane. Obviously, Kyrie can do it, but I think that like Kyrie's a lot smaller, so I'm not as concerned there. I think that 9.5 and double at plus money, it's just far too low.
I think that is absolutely only a play if Luka's out. Because if he's in, think about what Luka and Dwight Powell did to the Wolves. With better defensive, like they got Rudy in foul trouble and Powell went off, and and like Luka will absolutely pick on JV a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely like an interesting spot. I will say in the games, like they've played some head-to-head games this season, he had 10, 3, and 12 against Dallas. So it's a little bit like all over the place, but I do really like the spot at 9.5, but I prefer, you may as well grab double at plus money. To me, it's the same bet. Like he pretty much is always scoring 10 points.
Will you remind me on Slack if Luka's out to bet that?
I will.
Because I always forget to make these plays and then I'm mad at myself. Okay, so all right, let's go to Spurs and the Atlanta fucking Hawks. What a clown show. Joe, you like Spurs plus 7.5 here. Give me the cap. If it's more than just, we should just fade the Hawks into oblivion right now.
It's a little bit of that, and also a little bit of like, it's a little bit of that. And then it's also like a bit of, I think we should buy the Spurs. Look, they've been running Trey Jones with the starters, and it makes a world of difference. I talked about this like 2 months ago, and I said, why are they not doing this? And now they're finally doing it, and it makes them a lot better. And both teams over the course of the season, they're bottom 10 in adjusted net. But over the last 2 weeks, the Spurs are actually positive. They're plus 0.4. Atlanta is minus 9.7. So when we look at this and we look at some of the lineups that are going on, this is significantly better for the Spurs team. I think that Wemby, even though he's on the minutes limit, the minutes are more valuable. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Trey Jones is playing point guard when he's in. And so like you're getting like a real showing of what Victor can do. And I think that that's so significant because you're not seeing him like with somebody that's just not a point guard. And when you're in that circumstance and when you get to see those lineups really being run, you can kind of see a little bit more of the potential for not only Victor, but for the team. And the lineups with Trey Jones and Wemby are actually plus 4.9 over the course of the entire season. So that's a significant uptick from when you consider that the Spurs have been brutal over the looking at the entire season. So I do really like this spot for them. I think that it's a great way to fade Atlanta. And then the Spurs have just been so bad that everybody's like, no, they stink, they stink, they stink. And then everybody talks about Atlanta like they're supposed to be a playoff team. But honestly, like Atlanta probably should just tank. Like they're not good. Whatever they're doing just isn't really working. And I like this potential for the Spurs in this matchup, and I'll definitely grab 7.5 points here.
I don't mean to be hyper cautionary because that's not a way to bet the NBA either. You got to live with some of this. I will say that the tip time for this game is 3:30 Eastern. You should keep a very close, like technically speaking, the Spurs are not going to be it would be frowned upon for them to pull hijinks.
Yeah.
Even with preseason expectations and everything else, this number doesn't make any sense. Now, the last time that we were like, this number doesn't make any sense, it was when the Thunder were in Atlanta, and I tried to talk Sean Little desperately out of taking OKC because I was like, this line is there is voodoo here, and I am not somebody who believes in trap games because I'm just like, no, the market just adjusts for whatever. But that was like a nightmare scenario. At 7, I can't get like I have no idea. I have a 3.5. I have 4 points off on this game. So if we get a clear injury report, I will absolutely bet Spurs here plus 7.5. By the way, in the Action Network app, we see the Spurs taking early sharp money. So there's some sharp signals on that game as well. I love the over in this game, over 246.5. So here's a pretty simple one. Did you know that the Hawks defense is fucking garbage? Because it's garbage. It's absolute trash. It's hot. Like not just hot, right? Like it's not like a May day where it's warm outside. Like it is early August when everything is brown and stale and it's been sitting there for a long, like that's the level of hot garbage that it is. I also have a trend on this game for the over, which is that the Spurs are one of the top 5 teams in overs. They're an over team this season. Also, when they're among the teams that when facing opponents that allow 2+ points per game on average over on the opponent team total. So if you take the opponent team total and the team gives up 2+, and there's not a lot of those spots, the over in those spots is 59, 20, and 1 for 75% this season.
Yep.
I have this projected above at 248.5. It's enough of a clearance for me, so I'll take the over. Jim, you have thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with Joe. So I mean, one thing to think about here too is, when Jalen Johnson came back, I was ready to get back on the Hawks. I had tapped out of Hawks season. I liked them before the season, so I started with them a little bit. Didn't start great. Then Jalen went out. They really, really struggled. He came back. I was kind of thinking, okay, let me take a look here. Hasn't happened. So last 2 weeks, they are the second worst against the spread differential team in the NBA to the Blazers, according to Clean the Glass. And San Antonio is very much on the other end of that spectrum. They're actually a 6th best team. They haven't been amazing. They got the 17th best offense and 17th best defense in that 2-week stretch. But for them, that's a massive improvement. So if you're working off of those rankings, I think it only leans even more towards the Spurs side of this line for sure.
2 quick ones for me to wrap up. I've got Bulls money line. Cavs are back from Paris, and I don't like that spot for them. And the Bulls are among the teams. After you play the Nets, teams tend to struggle. I don't know why. I don't have I think it's that the Nets. I've talked about this before, that the Nets play pretty heavily pace and space. And so you're contesting a lot of threes. They offensive rebound a ton. That's a game that's pretty grinding to play against. And so there's been a consistent trend. Teams to play after they face the Nets have gone under on straight up. It's just been a bad trend for them, especially when they're in this type of a game. I think the Cavs are a good team, but the Bulls, it's a little bit of a bounce back spot, right? Like I just think it's like a little bit of an edge in terms of where this number has kind of gotten to. So when I've got the Bulls kind of in a nice bounce back spot, now the Cavs are rested coming off of that Paris trip. So not great from that perspective, but it's enough for me to get in on the Bulls on the money line only. I don't want the spread 3.5. I don't want any part of that. I will just take the Bulls on the money line. And to wrap up, I'm also going to grab the Warriors -8 here versus the Grizzlies. So now I make this 6. So why would I be on it? Because Desmond Bane's out. Because the Grizzlies' pets' heads have fallen off, and I think Bane's worth at least 3 points to the spread, which that gets me to 9 very easily. That gets an edge on it. And then you have Draymond Green coming back, which, look, Draymond and Steph have lost their minutes together. I've hammered that over and over and over again. They are losing the Steph-Draymond minutes, which is a catastrophe for the Warriors and is one of the reasons why Shams Charania reported to everybody's on the block. However, you know who they'll get up to play? The Memphis Grizzlies. They hate this team. Everyone hates this team. All those Western Conference teams just want to shut this team up, regardless of the fact that Dylan's gone and Jaw's out. And it's just like Bane and Jaren, who are just like normal NBA players. Those guys don't really talk shit. They will still want to put it on the Grizzlies to make it known. They like beating Memphis. I mean, this goes back to 2015 when they beat the Conley and Gasol Grizzlies. So I think they will put this on them. So I'll go ahead and I'll lay the 8 with the Warriors. Any objections?
No, honestly.
Did we know that?
Go ahead, Jim.
I was gonna make a dumb joke. You go first, and I'll clean up with the joke after.
Oh no, I was gonna say. I mean, I don't think the Warriors are very good either. But like the Grizzlies are just halfway. They're halfway in the draft at this point. Like they're cooked. They're done.
I was just gonna say, little did we know that fine in the West meant that they were fine to get the best pick out of the Western Conference this year.
For those
I
of
do
you
have
that
one more. I do
ahead.
have one more pick for the day, Matt. When you're done.
Oh, I was just going to say, there will be, when Brandon Anderson returns from football hiatus, we will be doing a podcast where we go over our futures bets, and he and I will have a long discussion on, like, I have thought more about our Grizzlies futures than any futures bet I think I've ever made, with, like, going over was it a bad bet? Like, I didn't know about Adams. Like, I wouldn't have bet Adams, but, like, should I have not betted it if Adams was that big of a, like, it's going to be a big therapy session in that episode when we do the Grizzlies autopsy. What's your last pick, Jim?
Yeah, I'm looking at the under in Indiana and Utah. I'm going under 249. I'll keep it simple. It's pretty much as simple as a Halliburton play. These are 2 for 2 to the under since he went out. One by 15, the next by 13. I've rattled off on this podcast many times, his on-off impact on the offense. It's still sitting around 8 points per 100 less when he is on the court. The defense is 1 point better. The shooting numbers are there to support it. It looks like the books are slowly adjusting, but not enough. I know these are 2 fast-paced teams. These are 2 high-scoring teams. But I'm at 249 is too high a number without Halliburton out there for me.
Yeah.
My only concern would be that if they rest on this back-to-back, because they put in a pretty strong effort versus Denver. They hung in that game in a pretty tough environment, covered the number. If they rest in this game, they're still going to play super fast. So it's just going to be like now. On the other hand, Pacers have actually been really decent defensively over the last 2 weeks. Like
really decent.
Yeah.
They've been giving really good effort. Loving our Pacers to make the playoffs bets and over win totals there. But that's like my only concern there. I have this on the dot. Like I would definitely lean towards the under because it's like if I have this on the dot and Halliburton's not playing, I love that question and I don't know how to quantify it. Like I don't know how much you should downgrade a total for when a player is out. Right? How do you quantify both ends? And honestly, a little bit of it is like with Halliburton, their defense is probably a little bit better. It's not entirely the reason because some of the defensive improvement was with him, but I think like that's an interesting question of like how much do you quantify the total movement when a player is out?
Yeah, and I mean they just refuse to play like Mather in real minutes and McConnell real minutes, so it's like they're not helping themselves here.
Did you have McConnell props?
I love McConnell. I love McConnell. I will always bet McConnell. But
by the way, it was really, I just want to mention this. It was really amazing watching the Jokic triple-double watch when I was at the arena on Friday for the Pelicans game, as Joe is like furiously tweeting about them getting Jokic back on the floor to get his 10th rebound. And like 5 people behind me in the stadium are like, grab the rebound. like clearly begging for this triple double.
Yeah.
All right, that'll wrap it up. So to review, Jim's got under Jazz Pacers. Jim has Pelicans -3.5, Thunder +1.5, but you're gonna want to watch all the contingencies in the app. When are you planning on betting those? I should have asked you that. When are you you're just gonna wait till like after when we get word and then bet in accordance?
I'm going to wait pretty late because, like I kind of said, these are 2 teams two games in which I feel very confident about one team and more doubting of the other. So I don't want any injury nonsense. I'm going to wait until pretty late to play those. So I have all the information possible, and I'm not as worried about it moving out of my range.
If you go in the Action Network app and you turn on notifications, you will get Jim's bets the minute that he logs them in the app. Make sure to do that. Joe's got Spurs plus 7.5 and Victor Wembanyama over 29.5 PRA. I've got Lakers Thunder under 238. Bulls money line. Spurs Hawks over 246.5. Warriors -8, and I will probably bet Thunder if SGA plays, depending on what the number goes to. All right, let's talk about most improved player. So there's two awards that are the messiest of all the awards. Like we're starting to figure out pretty much the MVP stuff. We'll talk about the MVP with Sean on Friday, and we'll kind of go over, like, Embiid should be back this week, so we'll kind of talk about how to project going forward how many the Embiid situation with games missed. Rookie, we know it's two guys. Sorry, Jaime, it's two guys. DPOY, I think, is still open, but I just think that it's more a matter of, like, how do you not vote for Rudy? Like, what's the case to not vote for Rudy Gobert? All the way down. But most improved in 6-man, which we'll do next. I want to do this 6-man next week with these guys. But most improved is I think still pretty messy in terms of, yes, we have a clear number one at the top, and Tyrese Maxey, who is -210 at BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. We have Alperen Şengün plus 275. We have Kobe White 15-1. Scotty is 16-1. Hallie missing games is 25-1. That injury hurts there. Anthony Simons 80-1. Jalen Williams is 80-1. Wagner's 80-1. Jalen Johnson is also 80-1. Derek White's 100-1. That's an interesting one. Paolo Banchero 200-1. Mikal Bridges 250-1, and Shaden Sharp 250-1. Jim, I'll let you start here. What is your cap on most improved player, and like how to sort through all this, and who is playable and who is not?
For sure. So the impetus for this in part was I got caught up in the moment watching the Hawks take down the Sixers during the week. Jalen Johnson going 25, 16, and 7. Incredible game. So I said, hey, do we need to think about Jalen Johnson in this conversation? And you said no, and I think you are correct. I'm here to say I think you are correct. Mostly because of the games played, though. I'll give it that caveat. So he missed during that stretch. He missed 14 games, so he can only miss 3 games the rest of the season. The other factor is, Brandon Anderson has talked about this. You typically want to go from, solid rotation player right around to that all-star level. That's like the kind of key demographic. Jalen Johnson, in part because he is missing time, in part because his team is trash, is not going to be even near that all-star conversation. So I think when you combine that with the games missed, I do think that I'm fine sitting out on him. There are a couple other long shots that I do think are a little bit more interesting. But I want to talk about Şengün for a second, though, because he is one, we got MIP, we got Maxey over the summer with one of the best reads beforehand, and he now is heavy favorite. I got Scotty. I gave out Scotty on the podcast a couple months ago, even gave out Kobe White. I have this almost entirely covered. I was waiting for Şengün to drop a little bit. It has not at all. He is absolutely killing it the last month. He's scoring about 26 points a game for the last month. So I am at the point where I probably am going to at least get enough that I don't lose money in this market, because I think this is an award that I really have covered very well. I was hoping that Şengün would either fade away or take a dip and his numbers would drop and I could hop on it then, but he looks like he is his full steam ahead. So I want to circle back to some of these long shots, but I'm curious if you have any Şengün or what your thoughts on him in general are.
I don't, and it's a shame because I do think that there's probably a better case for Alpi than there is for almost anybody else. I'll say this, including Maxey, because, like, look, it's not that Maxey's not awesome. He's awesome. He's gonna be an all-star. He's great. He's killer. He's so much fun to watch. He's playing next to Embiid. Like, he is the reigning MVPs, shouldn't have won, the reigning MVPs pick and roll partner.
Yeah.
Alperen Şengün is the best player on a team contending for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
Like, he is the best player on a squad with multiple veteran guys, one that has won a championship. you have a former number 1 or number 3 overall pick in Jabari Smith, a number 2 overall pick in Jalen Green. Yikes, that guy. You have all of these guys on roster, and Alperen Şengün is far and away the best player on the team. So, like, I do think that there is a degree to which Alperen's case is better. I am trying to imagine a scenario in which the voters elect Şengün over Maxey, and it's like, oh yeah, Alpe's really good, without everyone like really looking like, no, Alpe, he's amazing. Like he's the hub of the offense, and he's great, and he's been so much better defensively. Which, by the way, I'm gonna do a little victory lap. 2 years ago, I did like an entire breakdown, and I was like, hey, if you don't play extremely soft coverage, Alpe's actually pretty good defensively. He's got quick feet, quick hands, and can rotate really well. He makes some pretty good defensive plays. People thought I was fucking crazy, and now it's like, oh hey, like when they play actually like get pretty good, when they have like good defenders to go over the top of screens and not Jalen Green and KPJ, he's pretty good defensively. What do you know? Joe, what are your thoughts on Alpe and his chances at plus 275?
I like him. I think he's a great player. We've definitely seen the increase in the points per game. It's about like 6 points, 7 points almost per game that he's scoring more than last year. So I think that's obviously significant. My concern, honestly, is that I think that there are other players that are going to get more opportunity to like increase their stats as the season goes on. My concern with Maxey too is we've got a pretty decent sample size of him playing with and without Joel Embiid, and he actually sees a decrease in his stats when he's not playing with Embiid, which I think is a problem. That would normally be the spot where you'd say like, all right, like great, like you can take over a team, and like he does, he's still putting up good numbers, but that would be a chance to like pad his stats, say like I can be a number 1, and like really jump if he was like making like 30 points a game and like having like 8 dimes a game. But instead we see him like drop by a point and a full assist per game without Embiid. The guy that I think has the most value on the board right now is actually Scotty Barnes, and he's not somebody that I like think is like the most exciting player, but I think that it sounds like it's inevitable that Pascal Siakam gets moved. That's the way that it seems. Like that's the way, you know, like that's what we're hearing in the media. It's like Siakam's going to get moved, he's going to get traded, yada yada yada. I don't know what the Raptors are going to get back for Siakam. It doesn't really sound like they're going to be getting anything that's necessarily like going to be cutting into Scotty Barnes' usage. And I think that we've seen him. He's got the uptick in points. He's got a 6-point uptick. He's got 2 more rebounds per game. He's got an extra assist per game. And I think there might be a lot more opportunity for him to grow. And I think that coming down the end of the season, that's a spot that maybe like, you know, we can actually see a noticeable uptick in his output. And I think that maybe that's something that we can kind of look at. Obviously, quickly, RJ kind of cut into some of the usage, and we know that. But at the same time, I think that if Siakam gets moved, that's a huge opportunity for Scotty Barnes to really kind of flourish and see a bigger jump in his stats closer to when voters are actually voting.
Okay. Do you want the whole Siakam thing? Because we can do the Siakam thing here real quick.
We could do it. I know like it's interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, I've written a lot about it. Here's what I've heard. Okay. He is one of the rare players because it kind of has turned. The trend is not to quote unquote explore free agency. You find the team and you re-sign with them. Like you force your way to the team that you want to go to anyway, and then you just re-sign with them. So I want to explore free agency stuff is largely over, which used to be you do the dinners and the walkthrough, and they have these like really big presentations for you. My favorite being when the Knicks spent like $1 million on a video package for LeBron James, including James Gandolfini as Tony Soprano, making the case for him
just kind of
to come be a Knick. It was amazing. It's just incredible. I've heard some amazing stories of these things. Blake Griffin, when the Clippers made this entire thing of walking Blake Griffin through like his Hall of Fame ceremony and then traded him that season. There's just like a bunch of amazing ones. But Siakam, from what I hear, sounds like that's what he wants. His number one thing is the money.
Yeah.
Which is why he wants to stay in Toronto and re-sign on a 5-year deal. If that is not going to be the case, then it's like he'll play, but like you're gonna have to risk losing him for nothing. And the Pacers and the Kings are making a big to do about like, yeah, oh, yeah, we'll absolutely do that. I don't buy it. I just do not believe that those two front offices are willing to take that like you get that wrong. Like the Kings deal that was close was Herter, Mitchell, Davion Mitchell, Harrison Barnes, their most valuable trade chip, and a first for Siakam. And probably, I would say, I'm going to assume there's probably some either some seconds or conditional.
Which like questionable fit anyway with like Sabonis, but like besides the point.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like you lose Kevin Herter, a quality defender with upside, in Davion Mitchell, and your veteran small forward, and you get 3 months of Pascal Siakam. Like that's yikes. That's tough. Pacers, I think, have a little bit more room to wiggle, but they also like don't necessarily have a lot of stuff. I don't think that the Raptors would love. I think
like, it was like Bruce Brown, I think, right? Like he's like the major chip.
Jalen Smith, I think. Is I think that
I think Jarrett.
There's been word that yeah. Well, that's the one is I've heard that they don't want to include Jarris. They don't want to include Jarris Walker, and they don't. It's Jarris Walker and Mathurin are the two they don't want to include. So that makes it tough because when you're dealing with Masai, he's going to be like, "How about you give me Nembhard and Bruce Brown and Jarris Walker and your firstborn child and literally the spine from your body? I just want to Shang Tsung you." That's what Masai Ujiri is looking for. So I think it's tough. I reported this. I will just say this. I do not completely believe that the Hawks are just out. I think the Hawks have projected that they're selling, and that's fine. I am not convinced that this ownership group is one to trust a clear line of direction. They added another person to the kitchen this week in Chris Grant, now an executive advisor. There are so many people in that room, and I don't know who has like the say outside of Nick Ressler. Like it's crazy. So now all that's to say, with the Raptor situation, if you don't think that the Raptors can make the playoffs with Pascal Siakam, you should not do this deal because you should not bet on Barnes for most improved player, because I don't think that you need to plan for the likelihood. I would still cap the Raptors at a minus number to keep Siakam based off of my understanding of the situation. Does that change anything with you?
I mean, I think that I think they can still make it. Like they're not like the bottom of the East is just kind of bad. So it's like if you are looking at them, like they're 2 games out of the play-in in the loss column. So it's like if you're in the play-in, I think that's kind of close enough. Like I think that's fine. Like I don't think you need to necessarily be like a top 6 seed right now. So, but I do think that I think that there's a little bit of value on the number just based on what I think the Raptors could do, and just the fact that he could have an even more expanded role and see the numbers jump even more. Like I think that there is the jump already, and like this is really just I have a big Maxey ticket. I have a 14-1 on Maxey. So it's like for me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, if I'm gonna look at anybody, that's probably the spot that I might want to cover just because he can kind of jump up so high.
Well, it's pretty rare for me and Joe. I almost 99% of the time see eye to eye with Joe and defer to him the other 1% usually. But Scotty was actually the guy I came into this podcast with as like the to not bet right now, because since IQ and RJ have come to town, he actually has, because both those guys jumped in the starting lineup, his production's gone down. So he's averaging 3.5 fewer points per game. He's taking 2 fewer field goal attempts a game. I think that if Siakam leaves town, there is the potential for that, but I don't think you have to bet that now because of that. I think, the number will move a little bit. The books will adjust if they do a trade where he goes out and there's no other, potential starting pieces coming in. But based on, this previous trade with OG going out, like I think there's a decent chance that pieces would come back that would enter the rotation. So this is a rare time that I'm on the other side of this, because I see Scotty as a guy to avoid right now.
Fair enough.
Jim, you mentioned you like some long shots. Who do you like?
Yeah, the two that I like, there's one in that 80-1 that isn't Jalen Johnson, but it is a Jalen. It's Jalen Williams. He's up to about 20 a game for the last month. He has a very similar case to Şengün, to be honest. He's not the best player on a borderline playoff team, but he's the number 2 on the best team in the West right now. So if this is going to be a season long thing for the Thunder, I think we all think as long as Shai stays healthy, this team is very legitimate. You can make a case for Chet being the second best player, but in his rookie year, I think Jalen, if you watch the Thunder, Jalen he is the number 2 right now. And the stats are starting to back it up a little bit. If he can get up to that 20 points a game average, that's a pretty notable jump for him. He is a little bit young to win this award. So I think he's going to be in the conversation at the end of the year. The other one I really like, though, is even longer, and I think even more potential for hopping up into the top 2 or 3 of this conversation. Again, he doesn't fit the bill in that he's a little bit young. He's a second-year player. It's Paolo Banchero, who has been, I talk about the last month. He's averaging 26, 8, and 5 for the last month. And he's really, or not since the start of December. Sorry, that's even longer than a month now that he's been putting up these numbers. He's helped the Magic kind of stabilize through this like crazy injury stretch that they've had. It hasn't, the award has not gone to a second-year player in a really long time. They've kind of moved away from doing that in general. And he has a higher baseline than, I think Monte Ellis was the last to do it, who was coming from like 7 points a game. But if you look at what Paolo is actually doing, he has improved a ton in terms of his efficiency, in terms of his all-around impact on the game. He really is playing really strong ball. The Magic are another team that I think, like in the long run. So if they're in this postseason run and he has, to his name, kind of been able to stabilize them during, kind of high injury stretches of the season, and he's averaging something like 25 points per game at the end of the season, it's going to be a case that's at least in the conversation. So at 250-1, I don't mind, you can't eat the CLV, but it can help you build a portfolio. So those are the 2 long shots that I think whose numbers could go lower. I still think that this is kind of quietly a 2-man race as well in Maxey and Şengün. I think those are really 2 really strong cases at the top. But if you want to look for pieces to maybe shrink their numbers by the end of the season, those are the 2 guys, Paolo and Jalen Williams, that I really like.
The implied at minus 210 for Maxey is 67%. Is that too low, too high, or just right, Joe?
I think that it feels right. It's just like I think that it's just he has to do something demonstrably bad or get hurt to lose. Like, that's the way that I see it. Like, it's just, I think that everybody, like, since the season started, it was like, yeah, he's awesome. And it just is like, and then you see the numbers and the numbers are there. I think it's going to be very hard to shake the narrative, especially with Philly being so good. So I think it's fair. I don't disagree with, I really don't disagree with the number and Maxey being the consensus favorite.
I think it's low. I think if you give him a 25%, I mean, like, how do you cap injury, right?
Yeah,
how do you do that?
That's it.
If you give him like a pretty normal, like, even if we raise like the possibility of dramatic events occurring to 25%, I still think he's at like 75% to win this award.
Yeah.
Like, I think my best bet's just still Maxey at minus 210. I think that number's still short. Jim, is that too high, too low, just right?
So my gut was to say that it was too high, actually. But I think that Joe made a really good point that these are, like, I think that's me thinking in a box instead of thinking this is an award and it really matters to kind of like, before the season, everyone's like, oh, Maxey's in perfect position to win this. Now he's fulfilling the promise that those people, it's the confirmation bias on steroids. And Maxey's only missed 1 game. So he really does have leeway, even if he's, got a sprain that lasts a couple weeks. Like, there is leeway in these awards. Like we keep talking about, you need 65 games, 17 missed games that's actually a pretty good chunk. And if you're a player who's basically playing
it's
night,
a huge chunk.
Yeah, now
yeah,
like crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that theoretically it's a little bit high because I think Şengün has a really strong case, but I think Joe makes a really good point that this is the person we wanted to give this award to, and he has fulfilled everything that has been asked of him, and that matters in a market in which is driven by voting and people's voting specifically.
The last thing I'll kind of say here is if you ask me for like the long shot value, the only one I would really have is Kobe White, because Kobe's another guy that's like under the radar, but if you talk to the obsessives, like Kobe actually fits a lot of the categories for this award, which is a guy that was just kind of a dude and then became a primary component, improved in every single area, and the Bulls have been better to the point of like being playoff viable. Like they might make the playoffs. Like that's a possibility. And that's like a really big component in all of this. It's the reason why the Jalen Johnson thing I think is insane, is just like no one knows who he is and they won't learn because he's not going to make the playoffs. Like Jalen Johnson's probably more likely to be resting the last month of the season than he is to be like out there and actually competing. Now I say that like I say all of those things, and then you look at the standings and are like, oh, that's right. The Bulls are 19-22. Yeah. The Hawks are 15-23. They are 2.5 games apart in the standings, so it's not that big of a difference. But I do think that if I had to bet one long shot, it'd be Kobe White. But I do think I am of the position that Tyrese Maxey minus 210, even laying that minus 210, I still think that's short, and so that would be my best bet for right now. All right, let's go wrap it up for Buckets. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with Best Bets with Jay and Andrew O'Connor-Watts. Thanks for joining us. You can catch Jim Turvey on Twitter and in the Action Network app at Turvey Bets. Joe Dellera is at Joe Dellera, Dellera. I'm at HP Basketball. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Till then, let's get buckets.